I've been reading Jordan Peterson's Maps of Meanings, and I would like to read a sentence and talk about it. It's on page 149. The absence of specific depiction appropriate to inexplicable circumstance does not alleviate the necessity of appropriate action, even though the nature of that action cannot yet be specified. That sentence really struck me as bizarre. For people, the implications. Our imaginations can't imagine anything. And that is to prepare us for what might be. To give us, I guess what we hope, are options. However, that seems to be a crazy person. How can we possibly imagine everything or prepare for everything? Well, we can't. But in our minds, how do you go from an ape to what that is? Because if you can imagine anything, then you can imagine all the worst. Of course, you could also imagine all the best. So I guess really when you think about it, why are we not crazier as people than we are even? And I read a sentence like that, and I really wonder, I can't actually understand all of the implications for that sentence. I know it holds lots of information inside of it, things that I cannot yet understand. And that just drives me mad in a way, because here I am reading this, and I think of all the people, all the generations that led to this moment, and yet we still can't understand even what we are, in a sense. The absence of specific depiction appropriate to inexplicable circumstance does not alleviate the necessity of appropriate action, even though the nature of that action cannot yet be specified. So we are to prepare for everything, and we are to prepare for the unknown. Our minds. Because we must act. We know that in the world. You can't just be a potato, not for very long, and that's not really an option for most people. And I wonder if that, in part, might explain all the seeming contradictions, all the different ideas that people hold in their minds, because you never know when an idea might be useful. So in a lot of ways, we're loath to get rid of what might seemingly be contradictions, because in a different time and place, even in that own person's lives, they aren't. So someone might hold the moral ethic to not kill. Yet there might be circumstances where they would. I also wonder, how long has man dreamed of flying? How many people did that idea seem like a lost cause? How many people were made fun of, or perhaps even worse, treatment? And I'm assuming that that's been for quite a while, since, we have the Icarus Daedalus story, and I'm sure there's others I'm not that familiar with, a lot of ancient history or mythology, but I feel pretty confident that that idea has probably been around for a while. Yet here we are doing it now, in just a very short time frame. You never know when an idea might be useful. And for 20,000 years or whatever, that was a stupid idea. But here it is, and it's not suddenly. And I know, of course, because of our technology, a lot of things have changed in that regard, but it makes me really, really wonder how the limits on our imagination. And I know that we have mythological stories, that we have a narrative, that's kind of what runs through people's minds, through people's ideas. And there are, archetypes and stories that seemingly repeat themselves over and over and over again, and that those are generalized in lots of different cultures. So we do seemingly have a roadmap for some of them, but we never know when something else might be useful. And I guess, necessity of appropriate action, even though the nature of that action cannot yet be specified. So we must act even though we have no idea of what's coming up and even what we should do. And that would seemingly drive someone mad. I mean, if you really think about your life and how we all nowadays live our lives in the modern world, if you really sit and imagine all the things that could happen, all the natural disasters, diseases, cancer, heart conditions, an EMP pulse from the sun, not even including getting into more, purposeful disasters like someone trying to rob you, or, World War III, someone trying to hold you hostage for whatever reason. It's almost, I don't think that if someone were to sit there and think of all the potential negatives, and I suppose you could think of even the potential goods in either way, that if someone got too lost in the goods, they would just be lost in a fantasy, and if too much lost in the bad things that could happen, then, depressed and probably suicidal if they continued those sorts of thoughts. What governing rails do we have to corral our minds, which is our greatest weapon, but also seemingly our greatest weakness? Which leads me to another idea that I had while reading Mr. Peterson's work, was for most of human history, all of our not all of them, but certainly a lot of our threats were more material. To get enough food, to get enough shelter, to make sure the crops grew, to, treat other tribes as the danger that they were. Most of the things we could see coming, in some respect. Or even if there was a disease, they didn't, obviously they had their own theories of why you might get sick, but bad spirits or something like that. But you could see the effect of the disease on people. A lot of our threats nowadays are no longer material. And I wonder if that threat hasn't just moved to the world of abstraction. So the things in our psyche and minds are now our greatest threat. That's where all the demons have gone. Instead of what we can see out in the world, they've gone inside. And they've gone even more so on the inside because of the lack of having to focus on more external. And I wonder if this doesn't in part explain our modern neurosis, that we still get upset at things as if it were an actual emergency. Our bodies still respond as if it was an actual, fight that might be coming in when you're, disagreeing with somebody over your credit card bill over the phone, which it really isn't a big deal, but can be just as big a deal as if you were fighting for your life, against a tiger or something, and many other, minor things, all the hundreds of things that you see yourself and other people getting upset about when, like tweets, people get upset about tweets. These ones and zeros, these electrical signals sent through, the air, through cables, but they don't do anything. I mean, I guess they could. The packets of information could cause people to act, but in and of themselves, until someone, Yeah, it just seems very weird to me that they treat it the same as if somebody were coming to your house and barging in and, taking your things. And people see a tweet that they see that they find offensive in the same manner, which is ridiculous, but also understandable in a respect if that's all the body and the mind is prepared for. And I'm not sure how to... Is it trained? Do people have to be trained to see the difference? Is it not possible? I don't know the answers to these things, and I guess in part make this video as an appeal that hopefully someone will have more information or might be able to inform me on what is this and more about that sentence, because I know that there is more there than I can possibly understand. Like, that might have been the best written sentence that I have ever read in my entire life. And I can't understand it all. I can't understand the implications of that, because that seems to be an undeniable reality. And in some ways it does explain our seeming contradictions that we hold inside ourselves, because we never know when one of those contradictions might actually be needed.